Hey there, this is Linda, and in this video I'm going to put together week 1 in my 2022 Project Life album. My goal this year is to try to share weekly process videos with you as I work through my 2022 album, and hopefully I will be able to put these videos together about a week after the week happens that I'm documenting, and then share them sometime in that following week. I can't guarantee that I will stick to the schedule, but hopefully I will be able to do that. For week 1, I wanted to just kind of give you a little bit about where I'm starting, and then I will put you on fast forward and do a voiceover. So I always start my week out with a title card, and I have a sticky note in here as a placeholder that includes the dates, and I make some notes from my day 1 app about the stories I want to include so I can kind of check them off as I'm working through my journaling. I also slip ephemera into the pockets as I'm living the week so that I remember to include it. This week I only have one piece, and it's this envelope from City Beer Hall where we did trivia and we won. You can see it got a little wet. It's not even in great shape, but I might still include it just because it's the only thing I have from this week. I printed out my photos. I edited them all in Photoshop Elements, and I print them at home. I print on 8.5 by 11 paper. This is Luster Photo Paper from Canon, and I print on a Canon printer. I have an oversized printer, but I primarily use the 8.5 by 11 size if possible because it's the cheapest for what you get. I printed out 6 4x6 photos, which will go into 6 of the 4x6 pockets. And then for the 7th 4x6 pocket that is not my title card, I printed out these 2 photos, which I made 3 inches tall for a before and after of cleaning out underneath my sink in my bathroom, which was a project that's been on my to-do list for a while. I also wanted to kind of do a before and after for that, so I had pulled out my stamp book, and in this I have all of my stamps cataloged by categories or themes, I suppose, and I went to the changes category that I have in here and looked through my stamps that I have, and I decided I'm going to use these large before and after stamps from Ali Edwards. I have them labeled as AE13, so I knew that that was the stamp, and I pulled that out so that I can work with it when I'm putting together this spread. I also printed a few additional photos. These ones are printed as 3x4 to take up 3x4 pockets, and these are printed as 3x3. They will go into 3x4 pockets with some card around them. So now I'm going to look in my stash and pull out some cards that I think might work and crop down all these photos and lay everything out, and then I'll start putting together my spread. So the first step is always to print and crop all my photos out. So I put you on high fast forward here just because it's pretty redundant just going through all of the photos and cropping them down. But I like to have them all cut out first, and then I will lay them out on my spread and try to figure out where everything goes. So most of my photos are printed 4x6 or 3x4 to fill a full pocket, but I will print photos smaller than that so that I can mount them on cards. I definitely did that during this week because I have a lot of photos, and I want to make sure that I have plenty of spaces to include cards so that the spread looks more balanced. I'm laying out all my 4x6 photos first, and then I'm spacing out my 3x4 photos. You can see I have 2 that take the full pocket and 2 square ones, so I'm just kind of spacing them out so that I will have places to put the 3x4 cards in that won't be next to each other. So I like to have it where there's like a card and then a photo and then a card, if you see what I mean. Then for this spread, I'm not working with a kit. Instead, I'm working from my stash. And this was primarily because the kits that I do work with were all delayed, and so none of them had arrived yet. But this is a good opportunity to use up some of those things in your stash. I tend to use new kits for most of my spreads per month, but I want to always have at least one spread that is pulling cards from my stash. Otherwise, I will never use up those cards, and there's no point in having a stash. My cards are all sorted by various categories, and so I'm pulling out categories that makes sense based on what this week is. So that one that I just went through were filler cards that were winter themed. And this one, I believe, are journaling cards where you can include more than one story on the card. So I'm just going through those stacks quickly and seeing which ones might fit this spread. I'm looking for ones that would work with the stories I want to tell and that would work with the colors. So I pulled out that this and that card because I was really looking for a card to include a list of stories that happened this week, and I liked that the colors really went well. Now I'm looking through one for like love stories because one of the stories this week was my daughter going on her first date, which I would consider her first real date, and getting a boyfriend. So I found this card that said XOXO at the top. It's pink, so it doesn't fully go with the spread, but I think it works because of the theme of it and that it's muted. And then I was looking through some additional cards here to back these photos. So I really like to have kind of like a base for every single pocket before I start going through and actually filling my pockets. So right here, I'm just looking through all of these ones that are more like photo bases or patterned cards to mount those 2 square photos that I had printed for this week. Okay, so now I have all of the pockets filled, and I'm really just going to try to fill them, go through one pocket at a time and kind of put the card together. So I pulled out these label stickers from Kelly Perky, and I'm using them throughout the spread to add a little bits of journaling here and there. So I usually start with my title card, and I always do the dates for the week. So I added a label sticker to add that, and then I'm pulling a chipboard piece here to add to this. So I use the Ali Edwards Stories by the Month kits pretty regularly in my project life. And after the month is over, I work them into my stash, but I do label them so that things like the chipboard sheets are all together. So all of the January ones are kept together. So I don't have the kit for this year yet, but I pulled out the chipboard sheets for all of the prior years that I have not used up. And you can see I only have 2 of them left, so I must have used up the others. And I am going to try to use those up as much as possible on this spread so that I can kind of reduce what I have in my stash. This photo right here was the only photo I had from this week that was from our trip. So we had taken a trip to DC that was we went to visit family and then went to DC from Christmas Day through January 1st. And so I had included that trip in my December, in a spread in December in my Project Life album for 2021, but we did drive home on January 1st. So I did take this one photo of my husband when we stopped to get lunch. And so I added a row of label stickers on the photo to add some additional journaling. Because I have so many photos this week, I needed to get a little creative with ways to add additional journaling, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to fit all the stories that I wanted to tell into the spread without cutting some photos. So you can see when I'm writing on those label stickers, I was using a Sharpie, like a thin Sharpie, and that's because the pen I use smears on those Kelly Perky label stickers, which is one of my complaints with those label stickers. I really love the way they look, but they're such a slick surface. So if anyone has any tips for pens to use on those label stickers, please let me know. My regular pen that I use is just a regular Sharpie pen. It's a Sharpie roller pen, and I really love the way it writes. I use it for my scrapbooking as well as just like everyday life writing and for work. And I love them, but they don't work on those slick surfaces. They just smear. And actually they don't smear immediately, and then they just like bleed later, which is frustrating because I have used them. And then when I go back to look at the spread later, it's just a big mush. So something to keep in mind. This card was an older card from Kelly Perky that is about like a new year and kind of like your goals for the year. So I thought it was a good kind of fill-in card to use in this first week of the year, and just kind of do an overview of some of the goals and expectations for this year and reflections, just responding to the prompts. I like these kind of journal cards that have like prompt ideas on them because it does push you to tell some stories that you maybe would not have thought to tell otherwise. I also like to include a pocket every week that has just kind of like a bullet list of some of the smaller stories of the week. So that's what this one is here. And then I'm using these stickers from Planner Kate. They're like these little, I don't even know what those are called, like a little carrot as bullet points. I really love having different ways to add bullet points to these lists that I create. So planner stickers are actually a really great way to do that because they do have a lot of options for bullet points. And these are one of my favorite shapes for that. I really like the ones that I've gotten from Planner Kate. So I'm just journaling here a bunch of the stories from the week, and you can see I'm pulling them off that sticky note that I had created and just making sure that I'm not forgetting any of my stories. Not everything fit on that card because I did have a lot of stories, and that card had a really large title, which was one of the reasons I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I decided I'm going to make it work. I also wanted to document that I was trying to make some healthier meals now that we came back from the holidays. And so I'm putting a title on here using some Kelly Perky stickers. So this is a trick I learned a while ago. When you want to have your letter stickers centered on a card, you can work from the middle, but because they're not all uniform size, this works better. So I just took the backer off of that stamp set there and lined up all of the stickers on that. And then I can hover it over my photo and make sure it's right where I want it before pressing it down. And then I just added the chipboard piece on top and call that photo good. Usually if I do a treatment like that, it's something I would try to repeat throughout the spread. But for this spread, because I'm using up stash and really there's just like so much going on, I'm okay with just kind of doing different treatments on different cards. So right here, I have a photo of my daughter and one of her friends. I usually don't end up including photos from things like this where I'm not there because most of the time I don't get those photos, but for whatever reason, she had sent this one to me. And sometimes I will just include these types of photos in her album as opposed to the family album, but I wanted to include it just because it was saved with my other photos for the week. So what I did was I went into my stash and pulled out some embellishments from the Friends, or I don't know if it was Friend or Friendship story kit that came out maybe about a year ago, and wanted to use some of those up because that photo made me think of that theme. So with my story kits, once I feel like I've crushed a kit, meaning that I've used it for a Project Life spread and 3 projects, I will work it into my stash, but I don't forget that the theme exists, and I do label all of the embellishments so I know where they came from. And then when I'm working through other projects like this, where I'm just kind of stash busting, I will remember those different themes and go looking for those products so that I can use them up and don't kind of forget that they exist. But they're no longer going into a project with just products from that kit, if that makes sense. So this is a journal card that was from an older January Stories by the Month, and I can't quite remember what it says. I think it's like a fresh new year. Or a fresh start, something about a fresh start. And I had gotten my hair done this week. It was something that was like really getting behind, but because the holidays were so busy, I hadn't had a chance to get it done until January. So I thought that that would be a perfect sentiment to label this photo. I really love cutting my cards up like that and using them as embellishments because it gives you so much extra, it gives you so many extra ways to use them, and it helps me use up my stash because otherwise I would have cards forever because there are so many pocket cards and only so many pockets. But cutting them up really gives me an opportunity to use them, especially a card like that was so simple. Something like that probably wouldn't end up in my spread that often just because I don't like to use a ton of filler cards because I have so many stories and photos and stuff that I want to include. So the last thing I really wanted to include was a story about our trivia team. So we go to a weekly trivia night, and we had found a new bar to go to starting this week because there were just some reasons we wanted to switch from the one that we had been doing prior to the holidays and taking a break for the holidays. So I just had this like little envelope that I had gotten from them, but I didn't have a pocket card or pocket for it anymore because the spread was just so busy. But I did have this photo of my cat wearing a scarf that we had won. I put it on him just for a photo and he wasn't thrilled with it, but I thought it was adorable. So I thought that that would make sense to use that photo to tell this story. So I just added another one of those label stickers and this ephemera that I cut out, that I collected from the bar, and just journaled quickly on there about our new trivia location and, the fact that we won this scarf. And just some basic details because it is something that we do every week, but it made sense to note it this week because we had switched locations and we hadn't gone in a couple of weeks because of the holidays. Then I just used my tiny attacher to add a little bit of texture to that. And now I'm going to work on this card down here. So this is a before and after photo. I reorganized underneath my bathroom sink, and it had just gotten so out of hand and had been on my list for so long to fix it. But I didn't, I finally just said, you know what, I'm doing it now because we had gone and bought some stuff on clearance and they had some organizing things. So I just made it work and came home and did a before and after photo. So I used these before and after stamps that were from Allie Edwards. I had them in my stash and I just remember that I have them so that because I like to do before and after photos pretty often in my project life or other projects. So I stamped them out on vellum and cut them out. And then I'm going to line these two photos up on here and use them to embellish it. So I put that other 3x4 card at the top there just because I wanted to see where the actual center was of this 4x6 card, just so that I could make sure that these were lined up properly. It might look a little weird to do that on the video, but that's what I'm doing because it does have those grid lines. So I knew if it was off a little bit, it would look funny once it was in the pocket. So I'm just being careful to make sure that I line everything up correctly. And then I'm going to add the before and after kind of on the sides there to label the two photos. And then there is that little chipboard piece, that little red chipboard that says clearing out space, something that I wanted to add on here too. Partially because I really just wanted to use up this chipboard sheet that was from January. And it was from an older Stories by the Month kit for January. And I really just wanted to get it out of my stash. That's one of my goals this year, is to use up some of these older products and really clear out my stash and not have these chipboard sheets that have one or two pieces left on them. I had actually been saving this chipboard because my one little word in 2020 was space, and this chipboard has the word space on it, but I'm done with my one little word album from 2020, and I'm not going to go back and document anything else for that. So it just doesn't make sense to save it anymore. And I really don't know why I had held on to it. That is one of those habits that I've gotten better over the years of breaking, of saving certain things for the perfect project. But, there is no perfect project. It's better to just use it now rather than it lives in your stash forever. And I have definitely hoarded supplies that I loved and then found them years later and they were no longer my style. So there's really no reason to hoard products. There's always more stuff. And you're never going to love it more than you do right when you get it. And you're never going to see it if it's just sitting in your stash. But if it's actually in your project, then you're actually getting that joy from it. So this was the last chipboard piece from that set. It was just a little tab piece, and I wanted to include it somewhere, but I wasn't entirely sure where. And I decided to add a border on this photo of my cat. He's just hanging out on the table. And so I had just taken this, it was just a random photo that I took, and it doesn't really have a story or anything, but I thought I could just add this as a little embellishment on there. And again, I mostly use it so I could use up that chipboard sheet. So you saw the finished chipboard backing, and I just tossed it in the trash, and I felt so good about that because that's clearing space in my stash for the new chipboard sheet that's going to come in the January kit for this year. So I'm just going ahead and slipping all these photos in the pocket or cards in the pockets. Sometimes I have to trim them down a little bit to make sure that they fit, But, at the end of the day, everything, this is like the point where I'm last checking and making sure that everything is how I want it, if I want to add any additional embellishments or move some cards around. But this is like when I really feel like my spread is done once everything is in the pockets. So again, like I had to trim that one down, trim it down again. Those 3x4 pockets on the two edges really have to be trimmed pretty often. But, that's it. This spread, I'm happy with it. I'm going to call it done here. And, I was able to use up quite a bit in my stash. So let me know if you have any questions or comments below. And I'm so happy that you're here. And I will try to see you again next week.